Welcome to Freethought Forum. I'm Mark. This is Dan. We're your hosts for today. Before we get started, we'd like to call attention to our sponsors for the program. It's put on by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. The Atheist Society of Knoxville can be found at knoxvilleatheist.org, and the Rationalists of East Tennessee can be found at rationalists.org. And every Tuesday, the Atheist Society of Knoxville holds a meetup at Barley's here in the Old City, starting at around 5:30. Gather at the big table in front of the bar on the main floor, and we set a copy of The God Delusion right on the table so you can easily pick us out. And it's a great place to go, get some food, have some fellowship with fellow non-believers or people who like to question things or think logically or scientifically about the world.
And you don't have to have read The God Delusion to show up. Just come on down, 5:30. Set your DVR if you're going to skip this show. DVR this. Tell a friend. It's the only word of mouth. It's the only thing we have to spread the word about this show.
Yes, and actually that's how I learned about the show, is just going one day. And we learned about this fine program, and we've gone and had a great chat. It was last Tuesday before. It's a great time. And the Rationalists of East Tennessee meet up almost every Sunday. We'll call attention to some of their activities here. On the first and third Sunday of the month, they get together for lectures or roundtables and fellowship. And every second Sunday, they have a Skeptics Book Club, which we'll cover later in the program, details for that. And on the fourth Sunday, sometimes they will get together for a reflections meeting, they call it, which can consist of anything from board games to blood drives to potlucks. And so there's always something going on. We call attention to these things because we want everyone to know that if you think like we do, if you feel like you're alone, you shouldn't, because there's people right here in East Tennessee, right here in Knoxville, that are ready to meet you and welcome you into the group. So today we've got some topics later on, but we've got I think we'll cover in the news like we traditionally do on the show.
Right. We got a couple of news bits that we think are pretty interesting. I would like to mention another meetup that is coming up on Thursday. It is the anonymous Million Mask March. So if you want to come down to the World's Fair Park at noon, it is a peaceful, it is not a protest, it is nothing like that. It's just a demonstration to remind this country what is forgotten, that fairness, justice, and freedom are more than just words. All right? It's a peaceful march and your chance to meet other like-minded individuals. So we always have children at the marches, no violence, no drugs or alcohol, very family friendly. Come on down noon Thursday. You don't have to wear your anonymous mask. I'll be wearing mine. Mark will be wearing his. Or will he? We don't know. We're going to be anonymous.
You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. That's kind of the point.
Now they're organizing that all across the country, I believe.
All across the country. So if you're not in the Knoxville area, check it out on Facebook. I'm sure there's a spot up there. You can go to your spot in whatever city. Get out there, support. And I got a feeling that the people who will be attending the Million Mask March are going to like our television show. They're going to like the Freethought Forum.
Well, so to remind the country what it has forgotten, I mean, what do you think we've forgotten as far as speaking towards fairness and justice and freedom? I mean, do you feel like you've forgotten it, or do you feel like other people have?
It's interesting because there's a lot of this new social justice that has kind of become very popular in the zeitgeist. It's making sure that everyone is tolerant, and I really appreciate that message. But maybe we've gone too far, and we've forgotten that freedom of speech is just as important as what your opinion actually is. I don't know if we've forgotten it, but I do know that I watched the Republican national debate or whatever that was the other day, and I've just watched 12, 13 men and women up there on stage just lying. Just lying. And it's like, well, what has politics become? It's just become this game of you just say whatever you want, right? And then you slander people and you have insults and you're quippy and then you get to be president. But anonymous is like, let's look at the real things that are going on here. And so that's kind of what we've forgotten, is that politics isn't just about who's got the best soundbite.
Right. Well, yeah, you think a leader should have integrity, and that they should mean what they say and they're honest. And how much integrity do they have, or how much can we trust them if they're just going to say whatever it takes to get a vote? And if you're trying to appeal to everyone, I mean, you end up not standing for anything, right? I'd rather have a leader that maybe I disagree with, that I at least understand what they're going for, or at least that they're being honest, that that you have a good feeling, that what they believe in, what they're striving for. Because that's our representative for the whole world, and we don't just want to feel warm and fuzzy about who ends up in the office.
And I will bet you that most of the people watching did not vote today. Did you know that we were supposed to vote today? I voted. I'm not even registered in this state, but I voted with my absentee ballot a month ago.
It's election day.
Because I'm a hero. I don't like to throw that word around too willy-nilly, but you know.
Do you think they're lying, or do you just think they are?
The Republicans?
Any politician. Or any candidate?
Well, they're career politicians. They are trying to get elected because that's their job. And so they're going to say whatever it takes. And on one hand, I kind of like the celebrity who's like, I'm going to run for governor or whatever, because they don't really have a dog in the fight. They're just sort of an outsider going like, I'd like to make some change. Whereas these people, you know, have been career politicians.
Right.
They make their money, they live their lives on getting elected. And so you got to do whatever it takes. And I can understand that. I don't think it's the best way to make policy. But that's where we are.
Maybe. Well, we're going to get into the news. Before we do, if you have an opinion on that or anything that we bring up during the show, we want to take calls today. We'd love to talk to people watching the show. I mean, we could talk. We could fill the hour and more. But we'd rather talk to someone out there who has a question or who has a viewpoint that we won't be able to express. So the number to call in is 865-215-2288. It's a live show, so we'll take a call live on the air.
And not only that, our topic today is specifically Whoo. And we're going to ask the viewers, the callers, what have you believed in your life that you now no longer believe in, that you think, you know, we call that Whoo. And as atheists, we don't believe in anything supernatural, right? But previously to our atheism, we both did, and we had some very Woo-esque thoughts. We'll tell you about our personal Woo after we do some of the news, but we want to hear from you.
Right.
Again, 215-2288. Call us up. Tell us your Woo story.
Maybe people won't be embarrassed to do so once we humiliate ourselves on air.
Right.
Our crazy beliefs.
Mine's definitely going to be humiliating. Right. So let's take a look at the first news story we had here. This one you might have heard of. This is the mysterious city floating in the air above China. Did you hear about this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
I've seen the pictures. I've watched the video.
So we have the picture up there, and this strange hazy photo appears to show a city floating in the clouds, skyscrapers scraping the sky, but these are illusions created by cloud formations, blah, 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 over a city in China this week. I screwed that up. But this phenomenon lasted just a few minutes, and some people really took this to think lots of crazy stuff. They thought maybe this was an opening to another portal. I heard that floated about. I heard that it was some sort of elaborate military testing, and they've created some sort of laser that's going to, I don't know, but lots of conspiracy theorists out there.
Well,
what do you think?
It's interesting because this is a likely a naturally occurring phenomenon that we know about.
Fata Morgana.
Fata Morgana, and it's if you look up information, it's traditionally something a phenomenon that I want to say sailors, but that's not.
People in the desert.
People in the desert, people on the water, people in the ocean, people on ships will report seeing mirages.
Like a mirage, yeah.
And so this is interesting. Now it was reported. Which it was reported by two different provinces in China, and so I'd imagine two very different viewpoints. And so I don't know if a mirage can be seen as the same from maybe two different areas, but it's a known naturally occurring phenomenon, and it's interesting that people still will attempt to kind of project their beliefs or things that they've taken for granted in the world, project their crazy ideas onto something that we likely know the answer to, and it's ghosts. It's a ghost city if you believe in ghosts. If you're leaning towards more government conspiracy, it's revealing some type of weird technology that either they are trying to hide from us or this was a very deliberate reveal of the technology to see how we would respond or something. And
Or it could just be an internet hoax.
Or it could just be an internet hoax. Or likely, I thought if this was any sort of test to see how people respond, it would be how would people respond to a story like this? Because what do we have? We have a video. I haven't seen any like news broadcasts from China.
Well, that video was actually proven to be fake.
Really?
Yeah, Snopes debunked that, and so the only image is the image that we have up on the screen. That's the only legitimate picture that was taken.
The video was a hoax.
The video was a hoax.
And the
It was the photo like replayed over and over, and then layered. I'm not a Photoshop or I don't know how to do that stuff. But
right.
So a lot of people thought that this was evidence of Project Blue Beam technology, right? And that's NASA's secret plan to create a new religion headed up by the Antichrist, which it is apparently running alongside its trips into outer space. So, the Antichrist, because some weird stuff we saw, the Antichrist, right?
It doesn't sound likely to me.
Doesn't seem likely, no.
I couldn't figure out why they would want to. Let's assume all that's true. Let's assume that NASA is involved in this weird religion where the Antichrist is.
That's what that's their mission statement is, to create a world religion.
Right. It's obvious, right?
Right.
So what does this do? It creates so much speculation, and it's not. It's almost like belief in a god. It's like so open to interpretation, and it's not definable like what you're supposed to get out of this other than it was weird. It looks weird, and so I couldn't see the angle on the government conspiracy or why. What the significance of this technology so you can make things appear in the sky. I mean, once it's been revealed that we could do such a thing, just make things appear, these apparitions appear at will, then we will...
Right, what's the end game here? What's next?
Right.
Like, what are we trying to accomplish? So that like we can trick everyone, or who knows?
Right. Well, and now we know that video creating software is capable of making such a hoax, and so we are less likely to believe any story. Well, I hope most of us are less likely to believe a story like this. So when it comes up again, and so it's almost like.
Well, you said the key word. You said likely, and of course you should always use Occam's razor to cut out everything that's the least likely. 99% of the time, the most obvious, the most reasonable explanation is the correct one.
Sure.
It's just some weird crap that happened in the sky and somebody took a photo of it. Relax.
There are conditions that can exist in the world that can make things appear as if they're in the sky, just like that picture. So why do we need...
In fact, it's not really floating over my head right now. It's not. It's magic. It's magic. It could be the Antichrist back there projecting it, but I think it's probably just our producer.
It's Occam's razor.
Occam's razor, right, all right. All right, so let's move on to our next story. Okay, this one comes from Right Wing Watch. Teach riflery in public schools to eliminate gun violence and accidents. All right, think about that for a second. David Barton appeared on Up for Debate Radio to discuss whether Christians should support gun control. Spoiler alert, no, he doesn't think so. He believes there should be literally no limits on the Second Amendment. We should be able to own our own tanks or fighter jets. Those were his words, right?
So, okay.
His message was that we do not need to have any gun control, but go back to teaching riflery in PE, because they did that in the 50s and 60s, and we didn't have gun violence then. How many errors in that can you find? Half a dozen, like right off the bat? One, in the 50s and 60s, there was plenty of gun violence.
Is there?
Yes, there was.
Probably, yes.
Two, it's unclear whether or not you actually taught riflery in public schools. I'm sure in some very rural places they had riflery club, all right? And three, one thing I would do to eliminate gun violence would be to teach teenagers how to more effectively use guns. Like, this is like completely counterproductive to what we're trying to prevent, which is school shootings and these crazy casualties at the hands of guns.
Yeah, I think isn't it kind of known that they largely weren't more destructive because the kids kind of didn't know what they're doing. I mean, the bombs they make don't work, or the guns jam, or these.
Right.
And so more training, giving more training to kids who are imbalanced and not able to make.
If I just hand you an Uzi and I said, "Oh, go shoot up the school," you'd be like, "I have no idea," and you'd do like one of those crazy.
That's exactly what I would do.
Right. But if you're like, "Been using this since I was 12," who's more likely to go in and kill? Right?
If you give them a reason, I think that's why are people doing this? Yeah, so making them more efficient at being crazy might not be the right thing to do, but it's interesting that I didn't know Christians were supposed to not support gun control. I didn't think that was a pillar of the faith, or how that even ties in, right? What would Jesus do?
You got to make this leap of faith here, right? Don't murder.
Okay.
Unless you got a good reason for it.
Unless God tells you to.
Unless you're allowed. Unless it's one of those circumstances where you're allowed to.
Okay.
Which would be like if you have a gun and you just kind of feel like it.
So probably don't murder. Got it.
Well, right. Except for when like Moses came down and he had the 10 Commandments. Like he had just had the discussion with God. I was like, hey, God. It's like, oh, don't kill. And this number 5. He's like, yeah, it's medium important. And then Moses comes down from Mount Sinai and says, oh man, everyone's being a bunch of idiots. We'll start by killing everyone. We'll wipe the slate clean, and then these rules go into effect.
Right. Well, I haven't had a chance to read them out loud yet, or whatever. So, well, I don't see what it has to do. I think it's just an instance of.
Now, I was telling you earlier, I actually used to teach PE. Okay, and about a decade ago, I taught in a school that actually had a bow and arrow, an archery lesson. So we would shoot bow and arrow in the gym. We had the targets. And the kids really enjoyed it. Actually, there's really cheap bows with the strings, and we learned how to put them on and the safety and whatever, and the guard on your hand and all the stuff. And I got to admit, there's been nearly 0 school shootings with bows and arrows since that time.
Right.
Almost none.
Well, so in that case, the proper education
seemed to have paid off.
The expanded education. It would be interesting if riflery or guns were a part of school, and you had the kids. Maybe I think you expressed you had no interest in learning how to use a gun,
no.
And neither would I. So would we get some kind of excuse to get out of a gun class?
Like I got trigger finger. I can't shoot today. Sorry.
I took a really hard test and I got this blister. Yeah. So it's it's. I think, well, maybe it would help identify kids who enjoy the gun class a lot. Maybe we could start watching them. Maybe we should let him go ahead and do this.
Right. See how well you can take that gun apart and put it back together. Oh, very well. Let's keep an eye on him. Oh, he's also out burning a cat. Maybe make a note of that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are called tells.
Well, so why do people want to keep the guns so bad? I mean, they might really like guns.
That's the only argument.
They collect them.
You really like guns. And I'm cool with that.
I understand a lot of people who want to keep their guns are afraid of out-arming or out-arming their government. They don't want the government to be able to roll in on them. They got to be able to defend themselves somehow. So, but I still don't see the Christian.
And if you have a hunting rifle, you are definitely going to be able to defend yourself against a military drone attack.
Well, that's why. That's where the fighter jets and the tanks.
Oh, right. That's why you got to order yourself an RPG. Yeah, off the dark web.
It's our God-given right, I guess.
It was great when they were coming into our house with muskets and having to stamp and pour the powder and drop the pellet, and then it was wait, you got a 25-minute window to run away.
Well, I guess there's something to be said for that idea that if the government's too scared to come in and violate every single right you have because you have guns, well, then maybe that's okay. But I mean, is there anything? I don't think that's what's stopping them right now, right?
That's a good point.
But
interesting, you brought up a point earlier, and this is before we were on the air. You said Barton wants education to help curb the stem of gun violence, and you said
right. He's recognizing or addressing the idea that I guess we disagree with, but that to solve the problem, you educate people more. If they understood more about guns, they'd be less likely to misuse them, I guess. And I guess I thought it's ironic because that's our argument against believing in religion and even believing in Christianity or believing in God is if you understood more about the world, if you had more knowledge, you'd be less likely to misuse it, I guess.
Right.
And mislead people. So you wonder if people like this who take a very public stance against something, that maybe he's not being quite upfront about why they take a position, and they just lean really hard into, well, if you believe in God, you should believe this way with me, or if you're a good Christian, if you've accepted Jesus, then you're going to agree with me, and if you don't, then punishment awaits.
Right.
And so it's.
It makes no sense to us.
It doesn't make any
because
sense.
we use logic, but So let's move on to our next news bit. This one's also from Right Wing Watch. Bernie Sanders' popularity is a sign of the end times. Right? Rick Wiles invited climate change denier and end times predictor Cliff Harris on his True News to discuss climate change, which they agreed was a hoax and being used to grow the size of the government. Wiles also warned that leaders like Pope Francis, Al Gore, and Bernie Sanders are part of a plan to use global warming to impose socialism. He also said that this is a sign of the second coming of Christ, and his words, this is evidence of Jesus coming back, specifically saying that mass support for Sanders is evidence of the second coming. Wow.
Well, there's a lot of ideas there, right? The first one I had an issue with was how Sanders and his rise in popularity was any kind of indication of the coming apocalypse or Christ's second coming.
He's a little bit confused because he says it's, so is he saying that Bernie Sanders is the second coming of Christ?
I don't think he's saying that.
Because that would be sweet. I mean, why not?
It's a sign of the end times. I mean, that's something.
So Bernie Sanders must be the Antichrist.
Oh, well.
But how can he be the Antichrist if Obama's already the Antichrist?
I guess Obama turned out not to be the Antichrist. Or did he?
What?
Or was he? Did it?
I don't know. He's still got like 16 more months, so it could be the end times.
A lot could
We
happen.
just don't know yet.
A lot could happen. Yeah, so, and then what else is going on here? The global warming conspiracy. I don't get anyone who still denies that. How can you deny that humans and the way we live and the way we've industrialized ourselves isn't having an effect on the world?
Right. So this was his hit list. Pope Francis, Al Gore, and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
They're trying to impose socialism. As a socialist, I think that's a great idea. Oh, what do you mean everyone can't have health care? What do you mean? That's socialism.
Well, so, yeah, interesting. Are they trying to grow government?
I don't know.
It's.
I think Pope Francis is trying to grow the government. And he's come out against climate denial science. He said, yeah, guess what? The Earth's temperature is changing, and we should probably do something about this, given that it's our fault.
Right. Well, I guess that would be why he gets lumped in with, with those awful, awful people, is because he's committed blasphemy.
Hey, remember when we elected Al Gore for president? And then we just were like, nah, forget it. Jeff, kidding. We're at majority.
What a time to be alive. Yeah, the good days.
There's some hanging chads. Did we ever figure that out?
No, it wasn't important. It's
just moving on.
Yeah.
Just moving on.
You know, just move forward.
I just can't understand anybody who would. I went to a gas station one time and I walked into.
Just one time.
Just this very one time, and I was just chatting with the girl, and she said, "Well, you know, Obama's the Antichrist," and I was like, I'm just getting $11 worth of gas here and it's a Snickers bar. Like, can we not have this conversation? Like, you felt the need to exclaim that someone's the Antichrist.
I don't even know what that is anymore. Like, what is the Antichrist supposed to do? And, I mean, haven't they, if the Antichrist does exist and they're lying in wait, or they're in office right now, who knows, or about to be elected, don't they know, like, the story? Like, the Antichrist doesn't win. It ends badly for them. So, I mean, I don't know.
Well, see, so I think like people who say stuff like Bernie Sanders is the Antichrist they want the end times to come around, because if it's the end times, then that means they were right the whole time. That means that everything they believe is true, so they want the end times to come. And so they're going to say and do and blow up whatever's necessary to sort of start that.
Right. Well, that's what really bothers me. It's people who, the diehards, the fundamentalists, who really believe that the end times, that the end times are here, and we need to move them along. And that's what's really scary, is that they would act on that desire, and intentionally throw monkey wrenches into different programs or relations, just to spark conflict or spark what they think is meaningful conflict that God wants them to. I guess the age-old argument is this is what God wants, or this is what He told me to do. I mean, it's dangerous. It's so dangerous,
right? And
really irresponsible. And I don't think Bernie Sanders is. I mean, arguing for taking responsibility for our effect on the environment doesn't strike me as
Antichrist worthy.
Right.
That's not exactly genocide.
No.
No, the legalization of marijuana, which is what he pushes for, that's not exactly euthanasia.
Right.
No, yeah, it doesn't seem that evil to me. So,
Right.
come on, Antichrist, step your game up.
I mean,
What are you doing? Start bathing in like goat's blood and stuff. And
right. Marriage equality, people equal
sissy
rights.
stuff. That's,
yeah,
that's no good. That's no good. We got to really get this Antichrist thing rolling here.
I think
Right?
so. I mean, that's what I would want. That's what I paid to see.
I mean, as much as it's enjoyable to watch Trump up there, slinging insults, let's see some goat's blood. Come on, let's bring it, Antichrist.
I think that's a great place to just leave.
That's a
the
great
news.
place to just leave the news. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
If
So
you-
you can call us at 215-2288 and tell us about some woo, some nonsense that you believe, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be religious. It could be, astrology. That's woo.
Yeah. Anything.
Tarot cards, magic. And a quick story about magic. I went and saw an illusionist in college with a bunch of my friends. And after the illusionist was doing crazy stuff like predicting thoughts and things. And after the show, we came back to my buddy's house, and one of my friends was like, "Well, that had to be real." And I was like, "No, it was a show." And he's like, "Well, how did he do it?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, that had to be real." I said, "Listen,
Occam's razor.
if that was real, he would be president of the world. Like if he could predict thoughts like that, like he would have taken over the world, not just be doing a show for $450 in front of 38 jerky college kids, right?
Probably.
If he had that sort of mental capacity to bend spoons and things.
Maybe he had a family member that was telling him exactly that. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have this gift of real magic. I think that's interesting. Actually, bringing that up, the simplest answer in that case, when you don't understand how an illusion's being performed, the simplest answer is that that you really know magic, that you can do magic. And so, I guess maybe just trying to land on the simplest answer isn't always the best thing if you
True.
don't have the proper perspective. Well, we know illusionists, magic is a trick. We know it's a trick, and so. But people still do fall for it, right? They still like, oh, he must be possessed by the devil because that's really magic, right?
Right.
Depending on the trick.
Right.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, woo. Before we get into our woos, I've not heard that term before. Maybe once.
Woo?
Yeah. Where's that? What is that? Woo!
Ric Flair, 16-time
Right.
WWF champion.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Woo.
Woo! No, it just means just garble. Woo!
It's not short for anything.
I wouldn't think it's short for anything. Maybe woosticle.
Okay.
Is that a word? No.
Okay.
It just means woo-woo, like the woo-woo stones, or you're into tarot reading. I don't know. It's just woo. It's
Yeah. Well,
just nonsense.
I was our show kind of took on a theme of its own while we were incepting it, while we were developing it. I think a lot of our news stories cover fear. I think people are. We want to keep our guns because of fear of the government, and you want to. You don't want to be lumped in with the Pope and Al Gore because they're all going to hell with the devil. This fear to get people to side one way or the other, and so my woo ended up being I wanted to talk about fear and the religion that I used to be involved in, and then you told me you had kind of the same idea, and I thought it all kind of all blends together pretty well. How fear can influence you if you're not thinking too hard about something, or I don't know if it hits you at the right time in your life, because I wouldn't say especially gullible when I was part of my religion, or maybe you would say that. But
So, tell us a little bit about what you were, what your background, and we know Jehovah's Witness. I mean,
Right.
you're only the second Jehovah's Witness I've ever met. The first one was an Uber driver I met in New York City, and she used the word totes like 3 times, and I was like, I'm out of here.
oh.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's totes.
Well,
I
yeah.
was like,
So I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I was in the religion for. I grew up without faith with my mom and dad. We just never went to church. I guess she was experimenting. She grew up a Lutheran, but really kind of, I guess, disenfranchised with it, and found the Jehovah's Witnesses, or they sort of found us when I was 12. So I wasn't raised a Jehovah's Witness, but still very much a young a youngster, being introduced to a lot of these concepts and beliefs and ideas, and still being restricted in the same way that I think a lot of the youth. Well, I say restricted. That's a negative connotation there, but being brought up the same way a lot of the youth is in Jehovah's Witnesses, even though I'm not born into it. And I remember always kind of being afraid when I was younger that I didn't have a faith, that I would hear my friends talk about going to church with their family, and nothing about it sounded especially like I was missing out, but I was worried that I had no idea of God. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't have any structure or guidance or support for such beliefs, and they're really foreign to me. And you start watching TV programs. I was seeing TV programs talking about end times and apocalypse, apocalyptic beliefs, how prophecies, how the world's going to end, and this was 20 years ago now. The world was going to end any day now. And I was like, well, I would hope that God would know that I felt sorry for not knowing more about him. And so I saw this opportunity. The witnesses were there offering a home Bible study, and wholeheartedly participated, and felt I was getting a good education in what was really happening in the world.
Keep going.
Okay. To kind of wrap up the thought, so I think growing up 7 or 8 years in the religion, came to believe and have some really interesting experiences, and I wanted to highlight fear in Jehovah's Witnesses, because if you ask them, which I think is the best way to learn about their teachings, not to watch this show and listen to me and my interpretation, but you'll want to ask them and look at their literature. And one thing you won't find is a lot of references to fear and being scared. They say that they're very much against that sort of tactic in getting people to go along with what they believe. But I would argue, based on my experience, that fear is alive and well in the witness faith, and some really superstitious and really strange beliefs that I would say have no scriptural basis, which is what they pride themselves on.
Well, I want to hear the bizarre. I want to hear the weird stuff. I want to hear the spaceships, the magic underwear, that version of your.
Sure.
Okay, we'll take a call.
Okay.
But don't forget about that. Start thinking of the weird stuff.
Weird
okay?
stuff.
So we're going to go ahead. You're on Freethought Forum. Can we get your name or nickname possibly? And we would love to hear the wooiest woo you have for us. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm a ringer. This is Faithless Forest, but I heard you asking for people to call in and tell about woo you used to believe.
Faithless Forest, welcome to the program.
All righty. Well, I'm watching the show today. And when I was a 10-year-old boy, maybe I guess it would be 11 years old, there was this book that came out, and then like a TV movie about chariots of the gods, and it was about this idea that ancient astronauts had come to the Earth and, built Inca pyramids and made the lines on the plateaus in South America, and maybe even were part of the Egyptian stuff. And it was fascinating, and I read the book, Chariot of the Gods, and then a sequel came out. I forget what it was called.
Fingerprint of the gods.
Maybe not. But in it, the author made this assertion. He said that there was this Egyptian mummy, some priestess whose tissues were so well preserved that the skin cells could live. And I read that and I thought, wait a minute, what can that mean? Now, although I was only 11 years old, I had a microscope and I had looked at cells. And I think by then I understood, what death was. And when he wrote that, I realized that, my goodness, this man just writes crap, and he and he doesn't care. People believe it, and I realized all of this was just written by someone who believes anything that comes along, and in a sense, I became a far more skeptical consumer of information because of that sentence. That the assertion that the skin cells of this mummy could live. He didn't even say, like, what, you've been provided with a blood supply? What would that mean? And so at that moment I realized, no, there are adults out there who don't know anything.
So what did you do? Did you write a letter to the author?
No. But I did talk about it to fellow students my age, many of whom were also intrigued by the ideas. And I think I probably asked that question, what does this sentence possibly mean? He's just blowing smoke. I guess I'd like to think that I made a lot of them think more critically. That I didn't know what the word critical thinking would mean as an 11-year-old, but I was doing it.
I wish that I had been half the 11-year-old that Forrest had been. I could have avoided a lot of trouble if I questioned things, deeply like that at any point.
I think I credit the microscope to helping me because, I'd seen the real world and the thought of preserved skin cells coming alive, he lost all credibility when he wrote that.
Well, science triumphs again.
Right.
Alrighty.
Thank you for your call, Forrest. We appreciate it. And if you would like to call in and join us, it is 865-215-2288, and we are talking Whoo. And now I mentioned the book, The Fingerprint of the Gods, because I thought that it might have been by the same guy. I can't remember who wrote it, but The Fingerprint of the Gods it's about this guy, this very smart guy. He writes that Machu Picchu and all these different evidences for basically alien life form. And there were some sentences in there, like the one in the book, The Chariots of the God, that I was reading, and I was like, you presented a lot of evidence, but you lost me with that sentence, which is kind of what religion is. It's like, it'd be good, let's be nice to each other. But when you examine it further,
right,
crumbles.
Right.
And so you were about to tell us about some of the wacky
that's a great way to characterize it, where on the surface you're like, hey, actually things are starting to fall into place for me. This actually makes sense. So this makes sense of this crazy world. Of course it's this way. But then the more you drill down into the specific beliefs or the worldviews, you have to adopt for these things to be consistent and to make sense and actually be true. Then it's harder to match them up because you have to get so specific in daily life and things that occur and beliefs that you hold. And so
the best way to keep your worldview intact is to stop looking for the answers, which is what religion would have you do. They would say, don't look for the answers, we know.
Right, yeah, you have to accept it on faith. And I think you don't want to, it's like you don't want to not believe in Santa Claus because then he won't give you the presents on Christmas Day if you're familiar with Santa Claus. And so I think that, to a degree, I had some of those same feelings. You don't want to question. You're scared to, or you think that the problem is with you if the answers are good enough. Like, I must be dumb, or I'm not getting it. And they tell you, the answer you get is to pray about it. Pray, just have faith. Are you really going to question God? And you have these really weak arguments about why you should keep believing. Well, some of the weird stuff, I think, is starting from afar, looking at just starting it with a belief before drilling down into the details that don't quite work for you. Is Jehovah's Witnesses believe that there are angels and demons. And they exist in our world, like they're literally all around us. They refer to them as invisible spirit creatures, and a lot of times they're portrayed in the art, just like human like beings. And the angel and demon label just refers to their affiliation. Angels are on God's side, Jehovah God's side, and the demons are on Satan's side.
Where are the angels?
Okay, so angels can exist in heaven, but they can also come down to the earth.
Can we see them?
No. Okay. Oh, wow. So here's where it starts getting crazy. Well, in the Bible, it talks about seeing angels, right?
Right.
And they knew they were angels because the Bible says they were. And so back in Bible times, they could see angels.
Of course. Well, they had different eyes or something. Our eyes are more evolved. We can't now see that.
Oh, well, so yeah. So why can't we see them anymore? The argument would be, well, we don't need to. We have the stories that they did appear, and so they don't need to materialize anymore. Right. But what is more likely to occur if you think you see an angel, as far as Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned, is since God has, they determined somehow figured that it is not useful anymore to have angels materialize in front of us, the demons still will. And so if you see an angel, it's probably a demon.
Oh, that makes sense. Perfect.
There to trick you.
Oh, okay.
They can still materialize for some reason.
Right. So like I might be a demon?
Uh,
Would I know I'm a demon?
I think you would. I think you would. Now, but I don't think that, I never had the fear that like this interaction would take place, that a demon would be this physically evident in front of me. But
Well, they say that Satan is very beautiful. I mean,
they do, actually. I think that's an interesting dynamic or an interesting take in the Jehovah's Witness religion, is that I was getting to the point that angels and demons is just a label. They're both appear to be the same types of creatures. So demons are not necessarily horrific and with red skin or hooves for feet and things
Right.
like that. They are beautiful spirit creatures, just like regular angels, but they have just they're fallen.
so did you really believe this?
Yes.
Like you thought, I mean, as plain as we're sitting here, there
So,
could be a demon in this room.
So while I wouldn't think that you were a demon, well, you never know.
Well, I'm
so-
very
so
persuasive.
they could be in the room with you. Like they could be influencing what we talk about. They could influence things that happen, like if the power went out or something. So you believe they have that much power and they are that real, they can make things
Wow.
happen. And when they talk about their door-to-door preaching work, it's something the witnesses are known for. Anytime they seem to escape a questionable situation, like going to the door of a meth house or meth lab or something, and they magically don't get shot at this crazy trailer where they shouldn't be visiting, it must have been the angels protecting them. So while they won't materialize, angels as well as the demons can still influence
So
surroundings.
wouldn't you want to really go after the meth heads? Like they really need it, right?
I think they need, yes.
They need some Bible.
They would benefit greatly from Bible teachings.
Or
They
maybe
would.
we'd benefit from some meth. I don't know,
Case by case basis.
Case by case basis.
But we don't want to get off. I don't want to go down that road.
No, I'm kidding.
So it's just weird how much you can read into things, just coincidences and things that can occur when you believe that these creatures can make things happen. Then you start reading so much into things that just occur.
Right.
That must be that. That must be that. And
Do you have an example of that? Like you were in a room and a book fell off a shelf or something like that? Did you
personally,
recall?
I don't, and I think that's why I am no longer a Jehovah's Witness. But if you talk to a lot of them, they have experiences like that. I know in my own family, we're driving across states to just for a vacation in the middle of the night, and we hit a patch of black ice somewhere in Kentucky or Ohio, I think. And our van, I was sleeping, and my mom was driving, and my dad, I think, woke up when we hit the black ice and spun out of control on the interstate. And then I think the van spun 2 or 3 times and then stopped facing the correct way on the interstate on the shoulder, out of danger. So we weren't hit by anyone, no one was around. And to this day, my mom will say that's evidence that an angel saved us all. And I try to tell her, I'm like...
Tell her, because that's happened to me, I think probably 3 or 4 times, the most recent being up in Colorado driving on wet, spun around. Why would he protect me?
Right.
I am adamantly opposed to his views. Why would he protect me?
Just reading so much importance into just an event that could have easily just as gone bad.
Right.
And that it didn't, what is so special? Like, how can you be so arrogant to think that
Yes.
of all the people that do die in car accidents, that
Well, that was his plan too. Don't,
right.
whether you do or you don't die, that was his plan.
That's what was meant to happen.
Right.
Well, isn't that crazy? I think that's
great.
crazy. So that's one of the things that kind of helped me talk my way out of being a Jehovah's Witness. Is you have to, if you're going to say if you're going to say one event was influenced by an angel or a demon, then you've got to accept either that they all have been influenced or they could have been influenced. And when they're not, I mean, does anything just happen out of coincidence?
Yes.
Do you accept that?
Dang near everything.
Dang near everything, right.
I like when people say, well, that happened for a reason. I'm like, yes, the thing that preceded it caused it.
Right. Assigning this weird agency
Yeah.
to things that just happen. So it gets really deep into when you believe demons can, getting a little darker, they really lean into the imagery of demons and of Satan, even though they're supposed to be just beautiful spirit creatures. Anytime there's a reference, like in the book of Revelation, to Satan being a beast, or world power or government being a beast, or the harlot, false religion and things like that, they make sure to lean into the imagery, and I think which I think we have some slides of. If you look at the imagery in their publications, it's.
So explain to me. So did God like the Kansas City Royals more, or did he just not like the Mets? I mean, no one likes the Mets. I mean, so which was it? Did they pray harder, or did the Mets just not pray enough?
Well, let's.
What would be the explanation? Like, in all seriousness, what would be the explanation?
Are you seriously asking me this question?
What would the Jehovah's Witness explanation be? Not yours. Yours would be one of sanity.
I think that the sports are very much a part of Satan's world, and so it's all there to trick you. And they think it's equally. They think it is ridiculous that someone would think like, oh, my team is more holy than the other one that didn't win. That God blessed us. But then they'll turn around and kind of the same woo exists if. God bless the Jehovah's Witnesses, but not anyone else.
Right.
So it's weird how you can kind of turn on and off the critical thinking switch sometimes with regard to what you believe.
Right.
And it can be difficult to kind of shine the light on all your beliefs and be like, is this ridiculous? Or am I just believing it because they said to? But as far as I think the imagery that they invoke about invisible spirit creatures and what I used to believe.
So what are we looking at up there?
Them. Oh, this is the apocalypse.
Yeah.
This is Armageddon. These are now.
This is the end. Yeah.
They would argue that this imagery is.
One of the Backstreet Boys.
They would argue this imagery is not there to scare anyone, but this is what's going to happen to people who aren't on God's side.
Not terrifying at all.
Not terrifying
Comets.
at all. Rain, like
rain
actual
fire.
fireballs raining down.
What's the next one? Let's see the next slide.
And so here would be a depiction of Satan.
Move your head. Jeez. There. All right. Good.
He's patting my head.
Oh, so that's a demon.
Could be, right?
I mean, he's got a beard. I'm kind of no, not wide enough. All right.
So you can see Satan is.
Satan's a white guy. So Satan's Santa.
Oh,
I
well.
mean, if you rearrange the letters, think about that.
Satan.
No, I meant Mrs. Claus.
Oh.
Yes. Next slide. Okay, so those are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, I know them. Let me see, we got Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Ric Flair.
There we go. So you think that now? I don't think there was ever any point where they said that the four horsemen were literally four horsemen or demonic figures or anything like that would materialize or descend upon mankind. But they have no problem using the imagery or invoking it, and
that's terrifying.
If you look at their books, it is really weird. And
don't you think that like as a child growing up, and I, my story is very similar in the Catholic faith. It's child abuse to tell a kid that you do X and you go to this place, you do Y, you go to this awful place.
Yeah.
Like that literal lake of fire terrified me. Being possessed by demons terrified me growing up. Like it didn't help me live a more moral life. It helped me live in fear, and that's not beneficial for anybody, even the religious.
Well, Dan, let me try to lock down my thoughts. I feel like I've gone off on it. So as far as this fear, and you're right, I think it's especially damaging to children when you look at imagery like this, how they're going to interpret it, and how scary that not being on God's side, not being a Jehovah's Witness, is to them. Like that's their fate. That's what they're facing if they don't go along with these beliefs. And this is why you shouldn't question it. This is why your spiritual health can't be put in danger by things like critical thinking or other perspectives. And I would even argue, even though adults would say they're not, this imagery doesn't scare them, they would say it doesn't scare them because they know that they're in God's favor. Well, I think there's an element there of like, well, then if you weren't, then you would be scared of that. If you thought that was what's going to happen to you if you picked the wrong side, I mean, that influences your decision. And you might not say that you're scared or it's driven out of fear, but the alternative is not desirable, right? And I think that's just very subtly put forth in the faith to get people to think a certain way, or to just make sure that they don't question it too much, that they talk themselves out of it. And as far as Woo, I used to believe, and spirit creatures, I bring those up because you will hear things that's not in the literature, and they don't print stories like this, but things like dishes flying across the room, and they assume a demon threw this or destroyed this, or a demon was in the room with us. A demon made his presence known, actually materialized. You'll hear stories like Smurf figures, dolls coming to life, or E.T. figures coming to life, because they're ultimately demonic.
Do people know what Smurfs and E.T. are nowadays?
Well, so this was 20 years ago, but yeah.
No, I do.
So anything that is, you can have that weird, that
it's possessed.
It's possessed, yeah. The demons can literally possess things, which is really crazy. I mean, that's just really old world thinking, where mental disorders and actual phenomena, things that we thought were caused by angels and demons, that it is not a demon haunted world. There are reasons behind things and real circumstances, and there's a reality. And so it's the witnesses claim to be a very logical, very scientifically minded faith, but then still have a lot of these very old world beliefs that just, I think, kind of tip you off that they've not fully shed this very old world thinking that wants you to not question too hard. And I used to completely believe it, that these things were present around me, and able to do, that they were as powerful as the witnesses said, and you had to be really careful. And so there's an element of fear there too. If you express too much of an interest, you bring up astrology. If you express too much interest if you read the horoscope in the newspaper, that might open you up to demonic influence, and they might be able to take over your life just based on holding a tarot deck, or now using a horoscope app on your phone or something.
Yeah, I was just looking at my horoscope today.
Right. So now you would be open to demonic influence, or they would know.
I felt it today.
They would know that you're curious about such a thing, and they would use that against you in events that would play out in your life to drive you further away from the true faith. And so they're always watching. They believe very, very superstitious things about if you speak ideas out loud, they can hear you, but they can't read your thoughts like angels and God can. And so you shouldn't speak your fears out loud, because then they can use that against you. Things that have no scriptural basis, which they claim everything they believe is from the scriptures.
Well, that's just the NSA. They're doing that. And we're now on some horrible list, by the way, for doing the show, I'm sure.
Well, Dan, tell me about, we were talking about Satan, and you said that was what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, actually, sort of along the same lines of fear, like I used to really believe in the devil. Now, I didn't necessarily believe in God. I guess I did, but I really believed in the devil. And I don't really know where that came from, but it was a crippling fear for a long time. Like, I couldn't be alone in a room. Like, I'm not talking like 22. I'm talking like when I was 9 or 10. I was afraid to be alone, and I would run out of the room because I would work myself up into such a frenzy that if my mom or my brothers weren't with me, I'd be like, the devil's coming to get me, he's coming to get me, and I'd run away. Like, and that stuck around for a long time. I mean, I was the kid doing a backflip on his rollerblades, fearless.
Right.
But
scared of the dark.
Scared of the dark.
Scared of Satan.
If I would have been downstairs in my basement and, with my brother and we were playing, and then all of a sudden I lose track of him and he goes upstairs, like, it is dead sprint up the stairs. Like, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And even further to that point, like, as I got older, the fear of, like, the dark and all that stuff sort of went away. But what happened was I kind of transposed it into other people. I made some bad decisions, as a youth. And when I'd make the bad decisions, I would think, because I'd pray each night, I would say, Jesus, I'm sorry I did whatever I did. Some dumb 13-year-old boy thing.
Yes, yeah.
Right? Nothing really serious, threw rocks at cars or whatever we did. Something silly.
Yeah.
Not cool, but
still dangerous.
Yeah.
Still very much
don't do it. But I would be like, why did I do that? And I was like, oh, well, you were with your friend Steve and Gary. And I was like, Steve and Gary must have been possessed. Like, I really thought that. Like, my friends were possessed. Because why would they trick me into doing something that was a sin? And, that was the only logical explanation, because I wouldn't do that.
Where do you think these ideas came from? Do you remember? Like, was it taught in a religion you were a part of?
You know, I
or-
went to a Catholic grade school for 9 years, so, and I can't remember specifically, but I do remember the neighborhood around us. We had some very devout, extreme Christians in our neighborhood, and I think it's probably coming from that aspect. And I saw The Exorcist as like a kid, and, you know, that you have no concept of real and fake at that point, and you're seeing, you're like, well, the devil went into that girl. Like, why? What's happening to me? It's gonna. I was pretty much certain I was going to either die at the hands of the devil or fall into quicksand. Like, those are the only two options as an 8-year-old. Or like beat up by a ninja robot. Like, one of those three scenarios was definitely happening to me. And so I don't really know where it came from, but I know where it was perpetuated in every aspect of my life, my family, school, whatever. I mean, it got to the point where, you know, I would think, you know, there was only, as a Catholic, there's only a couple sins that you can't be forgiven from, and one of them is suicide. And so that was the most terrifying thing ever, was like committing suicide. And then as I got older, like before I became an atheist, I heard of somebody committing suicide, and I was like, well, that person's definitely in hell.
Right.
And that was just like, you're like I don't know about any of my family relatives, like I don't know, but I can say for certain that this kid, this poor, sad,
Definitively.
right, you know,
Wow.
and I believed it for a long time.
Right.
And so what our message here, I think, really should be that, you know, Whoo is out there, Occam's razor, you got to use it at almost every single stance, but I didn't even know that being an atheist was an option. I had no idea. Like I assumed that they were Satanists, you know, whatever. And so our television show here, the Freethought Forum, all the groups, RET, you know, Atheist Society, the brewery meetup, it's crazy. All these atheists are the nicest people in the world. They're not trying to scare you. They're just trying to live their life. Not the same for the Christians, the Catholics. They want you, or the Jehovah's Witness. They want you afraid.
Right. Right. It's interesting how differently you live your life when, whether you believe one thing or you don't. And when you believe that this is all we got, and fellowship between each other is actually very special, and we shouldn't just be concerned with converting everyone to the right religion. It's freeing. You really feel like an actual weight is lifted, and that all these weird ideas you feel like they're exposed for what they are, and when you're not ascribing to one specific one and settled on this is the right one, and you're able to critically think and examine ideas of them all in the same way. It's really useful, and it's important. It's important to do so, and
What we're trying to say is, come on out to the Atheist Society meetup every Tuesday, happy hour meetup.
Do we have time for a phone call? We have a phone. Maybe they're asking for directions to Barley's.
Come on. All right. You're on Freethought Forum. Quickly.
What's your name? Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
George?
Hi,
George.
George.
George? I'll make it fast. I really like the fact you're talking about fear, and we know that that's used in politics, and we know definitely it's the engine of religion. And I also
Very eloquently stated.
also very much want to underscore the idea that teaching about hell and devils and so on is child abuse and nothing less. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I completely
George, that was excellent statement. Excellent way to wrap it up for us. We're just about out of time.
This show could have been 15 seconds long if he had just called 45 minutes ago. Excellent. Yes. Great way to wrap up the thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Please join us next week at Freethought Forum. If you'd like to leave feedback, you can leave a voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. We don't have much else to say. Thank you. I'm Mark. This is Dan. Thanks for watching.
You are not.